Etta, welcome to the show.
Hi, Brittany. Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course, you're in Australia, right?
Yes, absolutely. So thanks for making time at the end of your day for this. It's morning here, end of your day there. So
No
we made
worries. Yeah, I was like a 6 p.m. interview. I used to do
Sorry
that
about I'm interfering with your social life there, I know.
No. When I still had a full-time job as an investor, and I started this kind of as like a side project. I did most of my interviews on weekends, and
Okay.
I didn't mind that, right? Because this is like extracurricular, like what my hobby or whatever. But and then I forgot that I allow people to book me on weekends, and it took me a few months into like working full time that I was like, oh wait,
You should
block
start
Saturdays. You can book
that.
my Saturdays.
Yeah, but no, I think definitely these sort of conversations are sort of less work conversations to me. It's just more fun to chat to people like you, same space, same circles and everything. And yeah, it's just a pleasure to be on here. Thanks.
Of course. And admittedly, I've done like over 130 interviews. And I will admit, listeners, I'll admit there are some times that I'm like an interview, like I gotta put the camera on, but every time I start talking to someone in Femtech, I'm just like, oh my God, I love it. Never mind.
Yeah, no, I think there's certain people who I kind of have job envy over. And I think like the diversity of the people that you speak to is awesome. So definitely some envy there.
My goodness. Well, we love to kick off our episodes with learning more about our guests. So we love to learn where you're from. Did you go to school? What did you study? Did you have a career before working in women's health? And how did you end up here?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in Australia now. I've been here for 12 odd years, but originally from the UK, married to a Swede. And so, yeah, just generally a bit international. So yeah, before coming to Australia, I was a qualified lawyer in the UK, working at a corporate law firm there, and then moved over here 2009 and continued my my corporate career, legal career, in Australia with one of Australia's corporate commercial law firms here. And then about 6 years ago, moved to an in-house company where I was in the legal team there as well. And then, drum roll, handed in my notice probably about 6 weeks ago now. So since then, I haven't checked my bank balance. But I've been focused completely now on Lactamo, which is great to be able to have that focus now. I think that with any new startup, there's always going to be that sort of juggle at the beginning of whether you bootstrap, how you bootstrap, whether you can afford that, whether you need to dilute straight away. Just, I suppose, that sort of investment of thinking, this is now my full-time job, and if it fails, then what am I going to do? So I didn't have that pressure for the first 18 months because I was had my other job as well, which was a positive and negative in lots of different ways, but really great to have been able to get to this sort of stage and to be able to commit properly to Lactamo now. So so as I said, I've been in Australia for 12 odd years. Originally moved over here thinking it was just going to be a sort of a sabbatical or a short stint here, and fully planned on going back to the UK and settling down there. And I think it was like day 1, day 2 in Australia that me and my husband, we just said, wow, we're staying here forever. This is awesome. It's exactly what we wanted. So so the anchor's properly down, and 4 kids later, and it really feels like home here. So and yes, we're far away, but everything is, well, I say everything is just a plane ride away. Yes, it's 2 plane rides away, if those planes ever do actually start going again. But no, I think we're also online these days, aren't we? So as far as that can be good enough, we can keep in touch and be connected, back with family in Europe. But no, it's obviously a strange time at the moment, and things are a bit different. So yeah, positives and negatives, but yeah, just really grateful for everything that we've got here in Australia, family wise at the moment, and setup wise.
Well, I'm really excited to hear about your company and what led up to it. But really quickly, since you just mentioned this whole, like, I quit my day job, I'm going all in. Is that that's a very like the American dream, right? In the United States, like you tell people you're quitting your job to start a company. Yeah, some people might be like, you're a little crazy, but it's really part of the energy here. Like everyone's like, yeah, just like go for it. Like, woo, you know,
Yeah.
YOLO, right? Like just go do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And
In
I think,
Australia, is it common or is it like, are people like, you're crazy?
yeah, I suppose I only know what I know here, so I don't really know how that compares with
Yeah,
the,
that's
the the sentiment elsewhere. But definitely, I feel like I'm really surrounded by friends who have that same attitude. Who, if they have an idea or something that's that's a bit different to what they're doing, go for it, try it, or whatever. And I would say, like, I feel really old these days, saying 4 children and really old, but with that comes responsibility, obviously. And
yeah.
so I suppose it really depends what sort of stage of life you're at as well. So when I was younger, I perhaps had more of a sort of like a dive-in approach, and I packed up and went traveling for a year and didn't wear shoes for that whole year, that sort of thing. And so now I'm kind of like, okay, I've got to wear shoes and I've got to have some sort of income.
Risk
Some sort of income.
assessment. You're like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
So I'm trying to get the grown-up balance, but no, absolutely, where you've got I suppose like a realistic opportunity, and I suppose where you've got that sort of energy to go for it, then definitely, I think there's definitely that sort of attitude here as well. And that was my feeling. But it was great that I could be, I suppose, a bit more conservative and make sure that I could carry on feeding the children by keeping my other job for I suppose sort of the first 18 months of setup, and keep that sort of income there. Just it took the pressure and the stress off, and I think that especially as women, we put a lot of pressure and expectation on ourselves. Uh,
exponential amounts. Yes.
yeah, and
Yep.
it's just a matter of saying, I certainly wouldn't call it this now, but it was a hobby to start off with, which I would never say to an investor, don't listen to investors. But it started off as a hobby. It's
Yeah.
not a hobby anymore. But I suppose if you sort of wrap it up in the early days as that mentally, then you approach it with a different sort of energy. So it's definitely not a hobby anymore.
Yeah.
And it's the real deal, and it's I'm really running with it now, and it's great to have been able to have that sort of start to it.
Well, tell us, what is Lactamo and how did the idea for the company come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So Lactamo is all about breastfeeding. And I previously didn't have an understanding of femtech or even the medtech space, to be honest. And it was actually when I became a mother that I realized how underserved the femtech industry is. So I went into motherhood with very little understanding. I thought that that childbirth was the difficult part. You just hear all these horror stories, like from a very young age, of the horrors of childbirth, and so that was my only focus. And I tried to sort of ignore all of that and not watch any sort of these horror documentaries, TV shows, and stuff and everything before having children. But that was my focus, and breastfeeding just wasn't even on my radar as a potential difficulty. I just assumed it'd be easy, that there would be like an on-off button when you wanted to feed. It would just, there would be exactly the right amount of milk. It's the digitalization, isn't it? On-off button of our world
Yeah.
these. But no, but realistically, I just thought that, there would always be exactly the right amount, and that would be really easy. So I suppose there's a lot of different things to say about that, managing expectations, which you can apply to most things. But I was just really surprised that I found breastfeeding difficult, and I felt like such a failure. I had these expectations on myself that I would, be able to, feed for, whatever sort of duration, and I just found it difficult from the beginning there. And so, I mean, obviously, the benefits of breastfeeding are well known. And I think one focus for Lactamo is that I never want to sort of, I suppose, in any way criticize people who choose not to breastfeed, or who mix feed, formula feed, whatever. That's not what Lactamo is about at all. I used formula and have absolutely, no issue with that at all. I suppose really what my focus is on with Lactamo is on giving mothers the best possible success together with the best possible experience. So there's absolutely no dialogue around, whether that is, the right choice for that mother or that baby. That's the mother's choice completely there. So that's definitely not a focus for the brand. But so the benefits of breastfeeding are well known if that's what mothers choose to do. But most mothers experience problems. It's 92% of mothers who experience common breastfeeding problems. And something that really surprised me, I know obviously UNICEF and the World Health Organization, they've done so much research into the space in terms of, trying to promote it, give it a platform. So they've done some really awesome research, and all of their statistics, obviously being who they are so credible. But they've got some fantastic, well, not fantastic. They've got some eye openers in terms of what they say. They're not fantastic statistics or quotes, but it's important that they're shedding the light on the problem in this way. So one that surprised me at the beginning was just it was UNICEF who said that no country in the world meets the recommended standards for breastfeeding. So like going back to me, I thought it was just my problem. I thought I was a failure. And I thought that with all of my children. And then I started to talk to other mothers and realized that they had similar problems. Okay, so it's me and my friends. Realized it was a national problem. And then UNICEF told me it was actually a global problem. So it's, while it's a natural act, it's also a learned behavior in many ways, breastfeeding, which is interesting. And so as it was when I had my third child that I had the idea for Lactamo, and I started just to sort of, I suppose, to unpick, what the problem was, or the problems plural were, and what potential solutions to those problems would be, and how that would translate in terms of help for mothers as well, because each mother shouldn't have to go through that process of getting to their third child and saying, okay, what's the problem? What's the solution? How can we offer this, whatever? It's just got to be, more proactive rather than reactive there.
What are some of the most common breastfeeding problems? So I always thought like, oh, the breast shows up, the breast, the milk, or the milk shows up, milk comes out, blah, blah, blah. But
exactly. You've got your on-off button.
Yeah.
It's the common breastfeeding problems, the physical problems, are oversupply, undersupply, pain, blocked ducts, engorgement, and mastitis. And mastitis is that really awful infection, which actually 1 in 5 breastfeeding mothers gets, and it's an acute debilitating condition. And it's just, the statistics are just so high there. And mastitis often leaves mothers so traumatized that they just stop breastfeeding because they just say, I don't want to ever experience that again. Yeah, exactly. So really, I suppose, seeing the problem, seeing what I realized would be a solution for me in speaking to friends and then wider lactation consultants, I realized that was actually really excitingly a solution for all of those common breastfeeding problems. And so, on the one hand, oversupply is it has the ability to be treated in the same way as undersupply, which is really interesting. It's basically the application of temperature, movement, and compression was what I was finding from all of my research, was the combination of those 3 key things had the ability to resolve those key breastfeeding issues, or to at least address those key breastfeeding issues. And so essentially what that is breast massage in lactation, including that that heat aspect to it, or that cold aspect to it, depending on what the problem is there. So all of the sort of the advice, whether it's on your generic baby center website, which mums will directly read, or whether it's in your journals, there's just so much advice to apply temperature, movement, and compression for these different issues. But there's just no translation of that advice into a product, which just really...
it always just says use your hand, right? It says get in the shower, use your hand.
Yeah, and I think I have 2 problems with that. One is that a lot of mums aren't comfortable with using their hand, and it's kind of often because they're new to breastfeeding, and so they, if you have like a sore leg, it wouldn't be instinctive to say, well, I'll massage the area. You just say, I'm just going to leave it because it's really sore and there's a big lump on it, and I'm not going to massage a lump on my leg or whatever. So it's not a sort of it's not an area where people are well versed and, you know, they understand, they've done this forever. It's a new chapter in their lives, and without that sort of understanding, there's I suppose a reluctancy to do that. So I'd say that's the first issue that I have with that. But the second issue is, I suppose, even if people understand that that's a good way to resolve it, I think there's an assumption, in some ways correctly, that there's some sort of technique to do that. There's some very basic techniques in that milk ducts all flow towards the nipple. And so, you know, the common sense tells you, and you know, it is the case, that you should massage towards the nipple there, basically. And so there's a couple of points like that, which I think are the main reasons why people aren't, you know, doing that with their hands themselves. And I think, you know, as you get further through your breastfeeding journey, have more children or whatever, then that becomes more obvious there. But I think there's just a real gap in the market, in particular for those two reasons, for a product that facilitates that. And often with your hand as well, you can't get that heat or cold aspect to it. So, you know, your hands are just one temperature. Sure, you can try and warm them up or whatever, but it's often the heat aspect which is really helpful to it, just that natural unblocking of the ducts there. Or, you know, or sometimes it's the cold aspect that you need there as well. So, so in having my third child, when she was very young, I had this idea and I could visualize it and I knew what it would look like and I knew that it would help me. Spoke to, you know, different people, realized that it had the potential to help others as well. So the lawyer in me went and got a provisional patent. Don't roll your eyes. A provisional patent for the idea. And that just really puts like a spade in the ground, basically. Yeah. So it buys you that thinking time, and thinking time, you know, is really valuable with any sort of new idea there. Provisional patent is cheap and easy to get. And so it was just a matter of thinking, okay, let's see what this looks like. And so I just diarised the end of that thinking time, and then I had another baby, so I was brain dead again. So just 3 months before that thinking time expired, IP wise, I engaged various different key consultants, and I basically said to them, be impartial. Does this fly? You know, tell me if I should invest in this, because every different stage that you go through, obviously, the further and further you get through the IP process, the more expensive it gets, and it becomes, you know, an investment. It's not a hobby anymore, to use the word that I was using at the beginning. So that becomes more of an investment there. And so I outsourced that to lactation consultants, to medtech commercialization experts, industrial designers. And they just all came back with a resounding yes. Why isn't this available already? And so that was I suppose the sort of the formal start of Lactamo there, that investment. And that was sort of mid to late 19. And since then, it's just been awesome in terms of the traction. Shortly after that, I had the opportunity to present at a conference in front of, it was 350 healthcare executives, C-suites, pharmaceuticals. There was some government representation there as well. And it was just the perfect audience, professional audience, to get on the radar of and to really discuss the, you know, show the credentials of the product, even before I had a realistic prototype there. And it was the CEO of one of Australia's largest healthcare providers who approached me after my speech there. And he was just awesome. He wasn't the sort of, you know, the typical supportive femtech demographic, dare I say it. But he was awesome. Not a lot of, but I've had various comments of, you know, people saying, perhaps older males, dare I say it, saying, well, I didn't know there was a problem with breastfeeding. I've never heard of one. So therefore there isn't a problem. But he was awesome. And he just said to me, my wife is a hero. She breastfed all of our 5 children. She struggled, but she battled on through it. And I wish this had been available for her. And I want this to be provided to every baby born in all of my hospitals, which was an awesome first order. And really, I think with any sort of startup, it's that sort of snowball effect, isn't it? Of, you know, each success leads to the next success, and it's that sort of, propelling sort of movement there. So that was fantastic. And so getting back to the product, so Lactamo is essentially a really soft sphere with hollow surface lumps. It's heatable and coolable, and it's filled with gel there. And it's specifically developed and designed for the elasticity of lactating breast tissue, which is obviously really specific there. And it's simple, it's reusable, it's affordable, and it's just really unique in addressing all of those common breastfeeding problems there. So it's the traction from the beginning has been awesome, as I said, and we've just since then won different industry awards, giving it the credibility and recognition from there. So that evening where I presented at that conference, it won the Actuator Award, which was a really prestigious award for medtech in covering Australia and India there, which gave it that sort of platform. And then won Best New Business Idea Award the next year. So that was in 2020 at TEDx Sydney with St George there. And announced as, so for me, I was announced as female entrepreneur, emerging entrepreneur finalist by Women's Agenda just recently there. Got some government funding, which is I'm just so grateful for. Various different pre-accelerators and different programs and everything there. So it's just that was the start really in mid to late 2019 of just this really interesting journey, which, and I think being the type of product it is as well, it's not just a new handbag, not dissing new handbags, very there's obviously a gap in the market for new handbags, but it's the type of product which really it's a social impact product, and it has such potential to to really make a difference there. And I think regardless of socio-economic status, breastfeeding is a common ground, and the problems experienced are common likewise in that respect. And so it really has the potential for social impact on a global scale. And just as I said before, I think what really kind of is the motivation behind it is to give mothers a better experience together with a better success, certainly than what I had, and certainly to improve on those sorts of statistics that we've got there.
Well, this is amazing. Now I know a lot of people are just listening in, so they're like, wait, what does it look like? So can you kind of get into a little bit more description of like, how big is this ball? What color is this ball? What does it feel like?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's kind of like the size of a golf ball is the best, most common sort of visual for it. And it's as soft as jelly. So it really is soft. And it's basically, it's a medical grade silicone, which is used on the outside. So food grade, obviously, as well. And that's, it's incredibly soft there. And it's got these hollow surface lumps on it, slightly larger on one side, slightly smaller on the other side, just so you can use it, as you need. It's always just going to be sort of applied, directly to massage your breasts in that way. And so it's basically gives mothers the ability to apply temperature, so you can heat it or you can cool it, movement, which is moving it over the breast in that direction towards the nipple, and slight compression there as well. And so the combination of those three key points there give Lactamo the ability to address all of those key breastfeeding problems: oversupply, undersupply, pain, blocked ducts, engorgement, and infection. And really excitingly, we've just completed a successful clinical trial. So here in Australia, which wasn't necessary to do with the type of product it is. It's a regulated product. It's a medtech product, so it needs that approval or that listing on in the medtech space there, whether it's the TGA or the equivalent in whatever jurisdiction there. So it wasn't a requirement. It's a class 1, which is the lowest standard of those types of approved regulated products there. But it was just, I think there's just so much noise in the baby space, in that sort of every mother needs these 1 million essential items, otherwise you'll fail as a mother, that sort of thing. So I really wanted to sort of, I suppose, distinguish the product from that noise. Yes, you know, you can get credibility from, you know, different awards, industry recognition, everything. But I suppose I just wanted to have that sort of trial behind it to show mothers that it's not just another gimmick, and you know, to I suppose to showcase the credentials of it. So in a sense, it was a bit of a risk doing a trial because Lactamo didn't sponsor it in any way. So it was literally just a matter of Lactamo was at the mercy of, it was Deakin University and the Western Health Partnership here in Australia. So they could have said it's absolute rubbish, no mother liked it in our trial, and, you know, go away Lactamo. But what they actually said was just how awesome it was. And so I think every mother in the trial would said they'd recommend it to other mothers, yeah, just some really great results there, which is just a starter trial. So it's the first, you know, sort of basically an entry level trial, you know, looking at those first credentials of it. But it's a really, really exciting start to more trials that we'd love to do. Don't have to do anymore. And I think, you know, it's not a matter of, you know, that the product should be on hold or whatever. It's just looking into those benefits even further, quantifying them as much as possible, which is a little bit difficult, but you know, any sort of further research that we could do there just to, I suppose, showcase the benefits essentially of breast massage for lactating mothers would be really excited. So the trial has been nominated for one of the most prestigious awards in breastfeeding here in Australia, which is great because it really just, you know, that all of this sort of recognition is just showcasing the credentials of the product even more there. So yeah, fantastic first start to it. The downside of being a regulated product is just that obviously Lactamo can't be for sale in other jurisdictions until it is has gone through that you know, that exercise of ensuring compliance for that jurisdiction. So that process of that whole regulatory strategy is underway at the moment, but it's just going to be a little time before that happens elsewhere. So unfortunately, just launching in Australia to start off with, launching on the 1st of August, which is the start of World Breastfeeding Week. So yeah, really just trying to for that launch, just shine a spotlight on the really disappointingly low rates of breastfeeding and the disappointingly high number of common breastfeeding problems, which you know, which can be addressed and should be addressed, and really just trying to sort of be proactive about that there.
Well, as we, you know, get closer to the end of this interview, I'd love for us to quickly kind of go through each of the problems, because even when you said oversupply, I was like, that's a problem. So can we just go through each one and say, how is it a problem? Like, what's happening in the breast? Because I think that's really interesting. I didn't even know what specifically the issues were. So oversupply, how and why is that an issue for women?
Just imagine that you've eaten like a really big meal, and that feeling of being so full, you're just like, I'm never going to eat anything again in my life. But translate that to your breasts. And so that feeling of engorgement, and often, you know, that can lead to other problems, engorgement, but blockages, that sort of thing. And so yeah, it's really addressing that problem of too much milk there, which to be honest, the sort of the instructions and guidance for each of those problems, I've more asked medical professionals to I suppose to go through all of that, like how to deal with it and, you know, what the recommendations are and everything. So so I'm definitely not medically qualified myself, but yeah, from a very sort of, you know, a layman's perspective, I can certainly say
Really full,
oversupply, yeah, exactly, too full, undersupply. It's just really that sort of, I suppose there's often a feeling of inadequacy is what I've heard from my sort of market research, and even felt myself as well there, of thinking, whether rightly or wrongly, I haven't got enough, therefore, and you know, that, you know, a hungry baby is an unhappy baby that, you know, potentially might not sleep as well, and, you know, sort of obviously that's, you know, an obvious problem there itself. Pain is an obvious one, just in terms of you know, the reasons for that and everything is what Lactamo is looking at addressing there. But blocked ducts, which I think really comes into a few of these different problems, can lead to various other problems as well, and is inherently, pain related as well.
What is the duct you're referring to there?
So the duct is basically where that duct is where the milk would be flowing towards the nipple there for the baby to be drinking. So if you block any of those ducts, there's lots of ducts, but if you block a duct, that one in the first instance will be uncomfortable and can lead to to a lump in the area there, but it can also develop into an infection there as well, which is mastitis, which I was talking about there. And so just that proactive massaging of those areas is really beneficial, and that's something, there's lots of things I haven't touched on, but that's something which is a really interesting part of Lactamo, which is its ability to be proactive as well as reactive,
like a preventative rather than a treatment for.
Yeah, exactly. And there was some really fascinating studies basically looking at the benefits of breast massage in lactation, which all of those key points that I've said, but some fascinating studies that looked at they had some results showing that breast massage in lactation had the ability to significantly increase the quality of breast milk, which is fascinating because there's all sorts of different, throughout your breastfeeding journey, the composition changes and your body's just so clever, depending on the age. So, milk for a newborn is completely different, obviously, to milk for a 2-week-old, and then completely different, so it goes in this various different cycles and adapts to the, even to the heat or to your baby's needs or whatever there. So it's then kind of obvious to understand that the composition of it can be, even increased there in this sort of, really exciting way. So certainly don't want to say that, that breast milk is bad quality without breast massage, but just from a positive way, it was really interesting to look at that research, and we haven't really specifically looked into it for Lactamo. It's not the focus of it at the moment, but really exciting to know that there is that potential ability to look into there to see about improving or helping with the quality of breast milk there. So it's the lipids and the casein content in particular.
And what is blocking the duct? What is it? Is it hard milk? Is it calcium? Like, do we know what it is that blocks it?
Yeah, absolutely. So it can be a number of things, but it's essentially just the milk not flowing. Those ducts are easily, they're small ducts there, and for whatever reason, whether it's that you're wearing a bra that's too tight, or you've been lying on that area, or it's just not, there'd be a lot of reasons why it might block, and so it's not something that's necessarily indicative of a bigger problem. It's just one of those things that that needs to be unblocked, and is quite a routine thing for a lot of people. But if it's left blocked, then that's when it leads to or can lead to a problem there.
And that's mastitis, right?
Yeah, it can turn into mastitis. So yeah, 20% of breastfeeding women develop mastitis in their journeys. But it doesn't always turn into mastitis, and certainly if you can be proactive, if you can manage it in that sort of way. So just about being proactive, and then if necessary being reactive as well.
Wow, I've learned a lot about the specific issues of breastfeeding and how they all need massaging apparently.
Yeah. Oh, I think, if you just think of a new mum, she's just, 100% this bottle of hormones, basically, and emotion and everything. So it kind of, to me, it makes sense, how beneficial that sort of, breast massage can be in breastfeeding. And it's just a matter of translating it and making it easy. Certainly, I think back to, myself in those sorts of days, and I just wanted it to be spoon-fed, easy, and I can't think beyond that.
Well, we have 2 last questions our listeners really love. We have a lot of aspiring femtech founders that listen. So what's an area in women's health and wellness that you think still needs innovating?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that it's a relatively new and recent focus on femtech there, and I think there's a lot of areas which are all really exciting. I still think, to be honest, there's a lot more space for innovation in breastfeeding, and I know that there's all sorts of, especially in your sort of your menstrual health and infertility, there's a lot of innovation happening there, which is really exciting in itself. But I think that there's still more space for innovation in breastfeeding, and I think that you can say that's a negative, that it's such an underserved area, but you can also see it as a positive as well, that there's more improvement that we can do. There's more help that we can give to mothers in that space, and there's definitely more room for innovation there.
I love it. And our last question is, what do you think the femtech industry as a whole needs the most right now in order to be successful?
I think it's really a continuation of that sort of spotlight, which is being shone on it there. And yeah, I think that there's such a gap in it, and I think that for any new business there's lots of different points where you can look at specific areas of it and identify different gaps there, but specifically I think it's specific to femtech. It's really something where there's a lot of room for innovation there, and so it's just really continuing with that sort of conversation and making sure that that people continue that energy, and really see those gaps in it there. And I think it's really great that women are feeling, I suppose, empowered to do that, because I think that's where a lot of the failing previously has been. If you have a woman designing a product for for men's problems, or a man designing a problem for a product for women's problems, that's where there's that sort of lack in translation, I think, in the products, in that sort of innovation space. So specifically for femtech, I think it's really great that women are feeling empowered to do that themselves. They're understanding that they're being supported, and specifically from an investment side as well, that there's an understanding that there's a lack of investment there. So no, I think that the future of innovation in the femtech space is really exciting, and I think that the whole movement, which obviously you're a big part of there, this whole movement, it's a sort of a really great community of people helping each other in the same space. So I think that's really important there, and I think that any sort of progress that we make there is only positive, and is really just supporting women in the future where we lack that at the moment.
Wow, I love it. Thanks so much for your time this morning. Your time.
Yeah.
And what an amazing product. I can't wait to see it when it comes out. Great work.
Thank you so much, Brittany. Great to speak to you.